All aboard!
No! I'm playing with my sand.
Welcome back to the Legendary Resistance. Today we're going to be talking about the differences between railroading and sandboxing. Do they both have a place? Do you want to be more towards one or the other? A lot of DMs have their own opinions, so we're going to be talking about that today.
To start things off, we're going to define what railroading is and what sandboxing is.
Yeah, so railroading in D&D is basically saying, here's the plot going along this track from this spot to this spot to this spot to this spot, and you as the I as the DM am going to take my players and I'm going to push them along that track.
Which can be useful and can be problematic. The definition of how we define, at least, sandbox campaigns is when basically you're playing in a sandpit where this is the world and you can build things and they could fall apart, or we can build another thing and they could fall apart again. So there is typically not many large overarching storylines, but there is the world and you can interact with it however you want.
Yeah, so there are benefits and pros and cons to both. And honestly, I have found in my D&D campaigns that I need both to make a cohesive story.
Oh yeah.
But basically, what we're trying to do is we're trying to make a cohesive experience, but not take away the player agency. Because being able to make your own choices in D&D and have them impact the story is kind of what D&D is all about.
Oh yeah. One of the best descriptions that I've ever heard for what Dungeons & Dragons and all tabletop role-playing games are cooperative storytelling mechanics, where they're games where you and the players and the DM and everybody at that table combine to create a storytelling world together. It's not just the DM and it's not just the players. You want to flesh out the story together.
It's also not the DM versus the players.
Oh yes.
The DM, you should be your player's biggest fan. Like you should, like a lot of DMs just really like to kill their players and go against their players, and that's really not the vibe that we go for here.
We've heard and seen and read a ton of D&D horror stories about player killer DMs and problematic players, and we'll be posting advice about how to try and make the players more incorporated and how you as a player could potentially be able to not be a problematic player.
Yeah. Anyway, so...
But that's not this video right now. This video we're talking about sandboxing versus railroading.
So, as a DM, we have a natural pull in the story. Because your players are going to be like 3 to 6 characters in your overarching story. And we as the DM are controlling all of the other characters, the world building, the lore, the weather, literally everything else in the world we are controlling. So as such, we have a natural sway to that story that doesn't involve forcing the players to do anything. It's just about what all the other characters are saying, what's happening around them. So, there should be a natural pull to the story that you can do as a DM without forcing your players to do things. Which is basically our first piece of advice.
Yes. It's worth noting that you should not be preventing your characters from making choices, because that's one of the biggest things of why people play D&D is because they want to influence the world around them. The difference between we're saying here is you can make choices in railroading and you can make choices in sandboxes. The impact that you need to do is be able to have those choices have consequences.
For sure. And part of those consequences can be micro consequences. So you have like, maybe your players are on a mountain and there's an avalanche coming. They have a certain amount of time before that avalanche hits them. They can choose not to leave the avalanche, but like there are going to be some pretty hefty consequences.
It's true. There's also a potentially story quest that you present them saying, here's a side quest. The side quest is this dignitary is going to be assassinated on this day at this time by this person. And if the party members say, you know what, I'd rather work on a soup kitchen and do other things, you as a DM, you probably shouldn't say, no, this person's going to get assassinated, go do that. You say, okay, and work with the options and say that day passes and the person probably gets assassinated, but your soup kitchen is going nicely, and you can even role play if people want to play as a soup kitchen together.
Yeah, if people want to do a soup kitchen campaign, I mean, the point of the game is to have fun. So, however, from there, like, they're given that deadline, and if the dignitary is assassinated, then maybe through the plot, like, there's something else happening because of that, and now the players are left dealing with the, like,
Increased taxes on their soup kitchens now.
Right, maybe their soup kitchen is now taxed heavily because that dignitary is the one who is standing up for the right of small businesses to not get taxed. I don't know.
True. And although this is a video about railroading versus sandboxes, what I would really like to be clear about is I dislike the fact that it's just one or the other. I would like a new metaphor, or simile to, not simile. Yeah, a new metaphor. I'm bad with English. Please forgive me. For exemplifying what these storytelling mechanics are. I'm a fan of driving down a highway. I like to think that the Dungeon Master is making the roads that the players can go down, and the players have control of the car, in which you're driving down the road, and you have choices. Do we want to take this exit? Do we want to go that way? Do we want to go all the way down? Or, if you're crazy enough, why not we just go off-roading and see where it goes? And it could be bumpy, and it could be unprepared, but sometimes off-roading is fun. Off-roading is where you can encounter the wild animals, and I think that's a much better example of what Dungeons & Dragons should be for you as a player and you as a DM.
I really like the road example for players. And for DMs, I always think of it as doors.
Yeah.
Like, you as the DM, your players are in a room, and you're just like, here are all the doors. Like, they're surrounded by different paths that they could walk. You show them all the doors. You're not pushing them through one of them.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying, here are a bunch of doors, pick one. Like, if they don't pick one, they're just standing there. There's not really any sort of storyline. But chances are your players are going to do something.
Yeah, especially because players are there to have fun too. Most of the time, they're going to pick a door. It's not often very fun for players to just sit there and not pick a door.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good analogy. I like that. Yeah.
But yeah, so with that, just one final thought from the two of us is, for me, it's important that I don't leave my players behind. So, like, if your players aren't picking up on the plot hook that you wanted them to, don't advance the plot too much without them, to the point where your players are left wondering what's going on. They don't know what's happening with this story. When you get to the end of your campaign, your players shouldn't be like, what just happened? Like, they should really know what they're fighting for at the end of this thing.
I'm personally a little bit against this, actually, because I'm a fan of timetables where you say, all right, you find out that the evil god is going to come down and possess one person of royalty in 10 days. And if the players are like, well, I don't want to do that in 10 days, then you already established a timeline, you established a deadline, and that's how the world's going to work. It works very well if you have an ambiguous, the world's going to end, to be able to have something going to happen when it's ambiguous. But I've always enjoyed the calculated timetables of when bad things might happen. Granted, it does require you to keep track of time as a dungeon master, which does add a little bit more pressure for you. So if you're doing more sandboxy or more doorsies, I like that.
Well, and there are, if you're doing modules instead of homebrew, there are modules of both of these out there for you. For instance, Ghosts of Saltmarsh, very sandboxy. It's a whole bunch of little campaign arcs that you can throw into like a seafaring adventure. Or you could go with something like Tyranny of Dragons, where like these cult members are collecting the items to get Tiamat out, and if you don't stop them, it happens.
Mm-hmm.
So, whatever it is that you like and you prefer, there's content out there for you. So.
Yeah. That's our opinion. Please let us know in the comments if you disagree. I look forward to fighting you.
Like and subscribe. I didn't.
Fine.
Down.
Bye.
Gonna be Choo Choo Adam.
No.
Choo Choo Adam. Yours gonna be Choo Choo Michael. Got him.